Hello, everyone, and welcome. In this recording, I'm going to be speaking about this upcoming solar eclipse taking place in the sign of Libra on the 14th of October 2023. This is going to be an annular solar eclipse, meaning that the moon is not able to fully cover the sky. So, around the darkness of the moon, we shall see a ring of fire, and annular is what means in Latin, so a ring basically. Now, this eclipse is quite powerful because it is very close to the south node. So it is a south node eclipse. Now, the south node is our collective past, the karma which stems from that. So it does signify that this eclipse is going to be hand in hand with a powerful release or built on something on the past that is going to be released. Like, for example, this doesn't necessarily just mean purges and endings and terminations. Sometimes the South Node does signify something that we have accumulated over the years, something that we have excess of. So, very many times we are guided to use that excess of whatever the energy translates to in our own personal life and do something with it, build on that or share it or etc, depending of course on your personal situation. Now I do sense that this eclipse is going to be quite significant from a collective perspective, so it will play out in a very suggestive and symbolic way on the world stage. But of course it's similarly as significant in our individual lives, because on one hand it stands pretty close to the south node, means that it is opposing the north node. And on the other hand, it really depends on which area of life this 21 degrees of Libra falls into. Is it conjunct with a personal planet or an important point in your chart? Or is it holding some kind of aspects with something significant? That might give you a good idea of what you can, anticipate or expect, even though with any eclipse, especially a solar eclipse, because a solar eclipse, we must not forget, it is a very karmic new moon, so it has a creational side to it. It has something that is going to grow and reach fruition attached to it. So there is that element. So it can give you a good hint of how it can possibly play out in your life, even though any eclipse is a fated element. So at least 50% we are in the dark, because at the time of the eclipse, the veil between the worlds is especially thin. So it is the divine will, the divine plan, the divine initiative that has great priority, and that many times, eclipses, an eclipse, our own thoughts, our own imagination, the way we think things are going to evolve in our life. So all of that can be eclipsed. Now, I would just like to share my screen and show you the specifics of this eclipse. So here you can see the sign of Libra, the sun and moon being at 21 degrees, and the south node at 24 degrees. And Mercury is also in the sign of Libra, quite close to this new moon slash eclipse, being at 17 degrees of Libra. Now, immediately, this tells me, this sun and moon, the conjunction of sun, the new moon, is sandwiched between the south node and Mercury. So there is going to be some very important communication or something, especially collectively speaking, something made public, something exposed, something revealed. It can be new legislation, a change of legislation, a change of certain dynamics within a partnership as in two countries, a country and a bigger organization like an international organization. It can also represent a powerful shift in certain diplomatic relationships. But this shift, this change, or this termination, eclipse, why not, is going to be spoken about Mercury or announced or put onto the world stage before it happens. So it can trigger quite a lot of emotion. Now, the other element that is very, very important is that Mercury can also represent our way of thinking, our thoughts, our thought processes. So whatever this eclipse may stir up in our lives, we will definitely analyze it, think about it, maybe even second think, maybe ask for an opinion, because Libra is also representative of another, of an ally, for example, or a partner, or someone else. So there will be a lot of communication, analysis, discussion, dialogue, why not Libra, the duality of it, and brainstorming attached to it, because also the sign of Libra, especially individually speaking, may be representative of a decision that will stem from this eclipse, a choice, a preference, but that which is expressed almost contractually, because Libra is also ruler of contracts, one-on-one agreements, legally binding words, so to speak. And Libra generally has a lot to do with the law, with legislation, with justice, courts of justice. So for a lot of people, I will imagine that this has to do with also either with a legal case, a court ruling, or something, a decision, a choice, an idea, a thought, Mercury, that is going to be made permanent or undone, something permanent being undone, because remember, it can play out either ways in a court of justice, and that will be very, very significant. Now, classically speaking, this might represent, for example, divorces or changing terms and conditions within a contract, maybe a unilateral contract, a bank, or something that has to do with the council, the state, etc. And how do you feel about it? Maybe you do not accept the unilateral terms and conditions that are basically forced upon you. So this will evoke action, decision, a change, a shift, something without a shadow of doubt is ending. Any eclipse, may it be lunar or solar, it has to do with the two luminaries. In this case, a new moon, so the sun and the moon. And the eclipse, is almost like a reset. It cuts the light, it cuts the symbolic electricity. So there is a moment of silence, there is a moment of stillness, there is a moment of darkness. And it is exactly at that moment of darkness is when the divine download, the divine will entering into play and rearranging things. So usually eclipses change something, transform something forever. It is never going to be the same after. And with the specifics of Libra, either a relationship, an alliance, a one-on-one, partnership. As I said, it doesn't have to be romantic. It can be job related, a project, friendship, alliance of any kind, even in certain cases, enemies. Because, in classic astrology, Libra, the seventh house, basically, is the known declared enemies or opponents, while Pisces, the 12th house, would represent the hidden ones, those which we are not necessarily aware of. So this new moon eclipse, of course, can be very significant because either it can end a relationship or transform it in a permanent way, or it can bring a certain kind of peace. It can bring an end to a conflict, a struggle, a strife, especially if it's a legal one. Now, one of the major aspects, the tighter aspects that this eclipse / new moon holds is a quincunx with Uranus. Now, that immediately says surprise. Surprise, surprise. Why? Because on one hand, Uranus in itself is planet of shock, planet of the unexpected, of chaos. So whenever another planet or any relevant point converses with Uranus in any way, one of the expressions can be always unexpected and surprise, a windfall, something may just happen out of the blue. But on the other hand, the quincunx is a celestial conversation which links together two areas of life which apparently have not a lot to do with each other. So that usually represents the unexpected, the unknown, that which is outside of our control, something even fated, but that fated element is not very clear to us when it happens. It might just shock us, surprise us, catch us unexpectedly, and afterwards, sometimes even months, years, we process it, we contemplate on it until we get to a bigger picture on it, until we get to the understanding of why, how, when, and how does it link into our fated journey. So always a quincunx is an element which we do not expect. So Uranus converses in this way, and this quincunx is quite tight because Uranus is at 22 degrees of Taurus. You can see here. And of course, the new moon is at 21 degrees, so 1 degree orb. That's pretty significant. So there is going to be an element of surprise. Now, this surprise can be something that has to do with finances, financial elements. Taurus is a financial sign, especially if we look at it collectively speaking. Maybe there is a sudden change within repartition of resources, maybe austerity measures in some parts of the world that are going to change a lot of plans, especially for people, especially for the, us little people who are dependent of a certain kind of external economic stability. So this can be a very, very potent economic chaos. Something basically is decided or turns the tables overnight, and certain things that we might have taken for granted or we might have relied upon are either totally different or no longer there. But on the other hand, this can also represent a sudden, an unexpected and very intense change of heart, especially regarding certain values. Certain things basically, maybe even overnight, no longer hold a value, no longer hold a financial desire, collectively speaking, or certain things no longer inspire trust, financial trust, for example. But Uranus is also, anything that has to do with technology, technological progress. So it might be something technological that is communicated, that is revealed, that is exposed. Uranus, especially in the sign of Taurus, can also represent earth movements and very unusual, chaotic, extreme weather phenomenon. So maybe something like that happens and there is a response. Or maybe the weather or earth changes, better said, are changing a certain situation. Now, another aspect which is very loose, but we can simply not ignore it because it is that very important, is that this transiting Pluto, who is already direct, but more or less in standstill. So Pluto before the eclipse, around the 10th or 11th, if I'm not mistaken, is going direct. But Pluto is a very slow moving planet. So before it actually moves and picks up speed forward, it is going to basically stand still in the sky. Its symbolism is greatly amplified, usually the shadow aspects with Pluto, revealing corruption, revealing unhealthy grip of power over the masses. Because right now we're talking collectively speaking. Capricorn is top-down authority, governments, the rich and the powerful, those who lead and hold all the money, all the power, because Pluto is also the planet of great riches, of great, big, big money, big, big wealth. The rich and the ultra rich and the powerful. So something is also being revealed there. Something happens there. And this Pluto squares not just the nodes of the moon, but in this situation also the new moon slash the eclipse. Now, as I said earlier, the square is wide because the new moon is at 21 degree and Pluto is at 27 degree and 54 minutes of Capricorn at the time of the eclipse, but it's still a square. We are going to be feeling this very, very strongly in the sense that we might have no choice because of something happens Uranus, the quincunx to Uranus, that kind of determines us to take back our power, or at least try to stand in our position of power and not really give into external conditions or anything that is forced upon us, anything that, Libra, we might deem as very unfair, unjust. So the general setup around this eclipse on its own is kind of demanding that we stand up for our sovereignty, that we stand up for our power. So whatever decision might be born, at the head of the international stage or local government or whatever the leaders or those organs who kind of modify the legislation come up with, we might have a we as in people might have a very, very strong response to this and are going to contest this in courts of justice. Now, of course, the eclipse on its own in Libra does suggest that our normality regarding, as I said again, legislation or our relation to authorities, our relation to an organization, to a company, our contractual attitude, what we deem as fair and unfair contractually, generally speaking, even ignoring our own situation, the general, what makes a contract fair and unfair, all of that are transforming and changing, and something is being eclipsed. So we say goodbye to something forever, and a new normality is going to take its place. Now, that new normality also depends on us, what shape and form and what feedback we give to it. So this might be the bigger picture. Now, on the other hand, simply a eclipse in the sign of Libra is going to be very transformative of diplomatic relationship on the international stage. Because it is so close to this South Node, however certain countries, nations built their relationships over years or hundreds of years, that might actually change, transform, because new circumstances, this Uranus arise. But at the same time, this can also represent, because of this Mercury in the presence, certain big treaties, certain big international agreements like Magna Carta and stuff like that, or the Trianon agreement, or for example, the human rights treaties and stuff like those big documents may suffer changes, or there might be a South Node, a need to redo them or reanalyze them, update them, if that makes sense. So this is where it's really, really dynamic and changing the international alliance and diplomacy status. And at the same time, Libra, this can also represent peace, where the normality is usually conflict, strife, war, why not? There might be an urgent situation, Uranus, which kind of calls for peace or ceasefire or for a compromise or an agreement. This is also highly possible. But of course, we must take into consideration that opposing the eclipse, opposing this new moon, we have the North Node conjunct planetoid Aries. And Aries was not long ago, so a few days before this eclipse, opposing Mars. Mars was not so long ago in the sign of Libra, and at the very end degrees of sign of Libra, it squared Pluto. Now that Mars and Pluto square are going to be setting up something that this eclipse will cover. So pay attention to what happens, on the world stage or in our own individual lives. Why not? Around I want to say 8th or 10th of October. So a week, let's say, before the eclipse, because that will mark how power dynamics are going to change. Mars in Libra represents, our own terms and conditions, our negotiation, what we give, what we receive, what we expect, and what we are able to offer in any way, shape, and form, may it be emotionally, psychologically, materially, legally, and it is greatly challenged by Pluto. So Pluto represents something, someone that has a grip on us, authority on us, a power over us, and we are fighting to get our power back. We're fighting to compensate that Pluto. And of course, this Pluto is also squaring the nodes of the moon. So we're feeling that very, very, very intensely. And Pluto is not just direct, but still standing still in the sky. So very amplified, and this is one of the last episodes when Pluto is going to do this in Capricorn. I do believe it will once more dip back into Capricorn, but that will not be. This is the last wrap up that Pluto has to finish his job in Capricorn. So it will really expose and reveal that truth which needs to give us power. Pluto cannot make us fight for it. Pluto cannot make us do any kind of action, but Pluto can reveal the truth. And what we do with the truth is our own personal problem. You know what I mean? So, yes. Now, let me just check my notes. Yes, oh, and something really, really important, but this might affect us much more personally speaking. Now, the Sabian symbol of this 21-22 degrees of Libra, where the eclipse is gonna manifest, says that a child giving birds a drink of water from a fountain. This is so very beautiful and symbolic because it represents our most compassionate nature. Without a doubt, Libra is a sign which is closely related to empathy, compassion, equality, everyone matters, fairness basically. So, of course, the Sabian symbol highlights this quality where a child that represents our primordial self. We human beings are compassionate by our very nature. And when we feel the need to help, the need to step in, the need to offer some kind of help, or the need to use our power to, how should I say, make something even more harmonious than it already is, that makes us truly noble. But we must not forget that this is an eclipse. So maybe our compassionate tendencies are going to be eclipsed here. Now, what does this mean? There are certain times in life when compassion is truly the key to everything. Our own spiritual growth. What we want to see in the world is the action that we take. If we want to see more compassion, of course, we take compassionate action. And to be compassionate, to be kind, to be loving, to be understanding is something to be desired permanently. However, if this is like an existing relationship or something that is built on the past that we need to release, South Node in Libra, then perhaps we need to be equally as compassionate to our own situation. This is where, if compassion is blinding us, if compassion is compromising our own situation, if compassion is excessive in our lives, well, then that is what's going to be eclipsed, as in a new worldview without blinding effect, if that makes sense, of the eclipse. And this, I do believe, is going to trigger like long-term relationships that are blocked, that are not going, or where the power dynamics are very discrepant, as in one partner holds all the power and decision and everything, and the other one is just submissive and for the sake of compassion. This is just an example. So this is what is going to change. How this Uranus will come with the element of surprise, but this is where what is built upon it, because it is after all a new moon. So something is born out of that. Well, when we analyze our situation fairly, as in we give ourselves just as much compassion, importance, and rights as to the other person, the other element who we're weighing, it can be, as I said, a job, a company, etc. Then we kind of see the big picture, but in a clarified way. Because only then, when we put ourselves in equal position, especially at a very important fated moment like this, then we know what the right choice is, what the right option is, what the right path is, and what is wise for us to make legally binding, and what it is that we have to undo. And I just want to show you something. So first of all, we see opposing the eclipse this North Node conjunct Aries. Aries is the goddess of discord. Aries is the goddess of chaos. So basically, in the sign of Aries, she fights for the individual. No one is more important, not even the collective, not even the group, not even, per absurdum, of course, the harmony of the universe, the cosmos. No one is more important than the harmony and the well-being of the individual. So Eris here is fighting very fiercely that no one is left behind, everyone's voice is being heard, and everyone has one, more or less their own way, their own sense of justice. So this North Node conjunct Eris is making us fight for our sovereignty and for our desires, for our goals, that which we want to accomplish, that which we want to do. For example, Aries, the sign of the first breath, everything new that we are yet to experience in this lifetime, in this incarnation. There is a moment when even the celestial energies, the nodes of the moon, are telling us that this is the time right now for you to fight for everything new that you want to experience in your life, a new direction, or a new self-image, or a reinvention of the self, or whatever, Aries energy. And it's not just Aries who is there, but we also have White Moon Selena. So White Moon Selena is her symbolism, her energy is almost like the opposite of Lilith, Black Moon Lilith. Now, if Black Moon Lilith is our primal, our instinctual urges, very many times our perversion, our darkness, our anger, know the symbolism of Lilith. She did not accept the divine rule and rejected Adam as her consort, as her mate. But she was in a way entitled to that. She could take that action, and it had to be okay. Now, White Moon Selena represents the most noble, the higher aspirations of our souls, its higher expression and manifestation. So, fighting for our dreams, fighting for what our soul demands of us, but the most noble, the most, how should I say, elevated principles, desires, wishes, goals, that is emphasized by the North Node conjunct White Moon Selena. And of course, Aries is conjunct her as well. So this means that it is very, very important to take into consideration the needs of the self and the needs of our soul. Those needs that are not going to go anywhere, because the soul is not really under our control directly. We can bypass certain things, we can negotiate, we can bully the soul into submission, but that doesn't mean that the desires and what it wants to do are, discarded. They aren't even swept under the rug, basically, because they will always come to the surface in dreams, in aspirations, in looking at other people, looking at life externally. When we see our desires enacted by another person or in any way externally, then the soul will simply awaken and say, why can't I live all of this? And it will ask you, it will ask us, basically. So it is very, very, so this white moon, Selena, is also opposing this eclipse. So it's very, very important for us to be in tune of what our soul asks of us. And that what it asks is not really a rational or logical or a mercurial expression. It is, a feeling that we need to give ourselves, or direct our journey, our present journey in life, in such a way that we also get what our soul, our higher self, basically asks from us. And also this white moon Selena conjunct the North Node represent a moment of blessings when our soul is with us. Potentially, it is our greatest ally as we speak. But of course, there are other aspects in the sky which don't necessarily converse directly with the eclipse, with the new moon, but are very, very relevant. And one of these aspects, so I still have to show you the asteroids, is Pallas Athena. Pallas Athena is also in Libra. So look at how many power players we have in Libra. We have Pallas Athena, Mercury, Moon, the Sun, and I do believe that dwarf planet Haumea has left us. She moved back into the sign of Scorpio. And we also have, if I'm not mistaken, Makemake, dwarf planet Makemake. Just that Makemake is not gonna move a lot. So Makemake is gonna stay comfortably in Libra for a couple of more years, but it's still a strong energetic configuration. But anyway, where I wanted to go with this is Pallas Athena holds a quincunx with Jupiter. Pallas Athena in Libra, the tactics, the power of the law and legislation, figuring out our rights, just like when a lawyer is preparing for a case. It has to gather facts, information, legal, how you say that, jurisdiction, the customs and traditions of the jurisdiction, what kind of legal cases, similar legal cases went on before. And Jupiter is the planet of law, of justice in itself. So again, a surprise comes from the legal field. And Jupiter in the sign of Taurus, again, a value may change very, very quickly. Something changes value-wise. Something changes materially speaking. And materially speaking, we have at this time of the eclipse, Venus in the sign of Virgo. Now, Venus is not able to bring forward her higher qualities in the sign of Virgo because she is debilitated. She is exalted, very comfortable, beautiful, her best self in the sign of Pisces. So the opposing sign Virgo, she's not all that romantic and ideal and empathic and compassionate, but she's very, very, she's the down-to-earth Venus. For example, Venus in Virgo is the depiction of the Nine of Pentacles. where the lady figure stands tall and proud, and she has everything that she wants in her life, even though she's single. So Venus in Virgo is practicality. Everything that I have is making me happy. That is the source of my joy and my pleasure and my comfort, etc., etc. So this is a very, very practical, take no BS kind of Venus. And she is very close to Black Moon Lilith. Black Moon Lilith is already in the sign of Virgo at this moment. Now, I spoke about Black Moon Lilith and Virgo in a previous horoscope. Basically, it highlights the analytical qualities of Virgo in a very, very hair-splitting way. This is where no error, no mistake, no flaw, no inconvenience is outside of our awareness. So this is where we're embodying the Virgo energy in a more, I don't want to say necessarily aggressive, but in a more meticulous way, in a more unforgiving way than we usually do. But this also has a very positive side. We observe that which we truly need to observe. You know what I mean? This is where we're not as blinded by naivety. This is where we don't have the expression of Pisces all that much. No compassion. And if the ideal is beautiful, then everything is beautiful. Let's not look at the practical, what is down earth. Let's look at the ideal, etc., etc. So this emphasizes Virgo's darker side, where it labels everything, and of course, it discriminates in a certain way. On the other hand, Black Moon Lilith in Virgo is also about microbiology. Virgo rules microorganism, viruses, bacteria, everything microscopic. So put this in context for yourself, because this may represent either that we're getting a certain kind of answers about the COVID, or that new medical elements or there is going to be some kind of crisis in the medical world, maybe a totally different kind than we had at the COVID, because when we had the COVID situation, Black Moon, especially when it began, Black Moon Lilith was in Pisces, another medical sign. Pisces rules hospitals, medical institutions, isolation, confinement, you know, ICU, if that's how you say it. Now, Virgo at the same time also rules medical research, also rules what we do with medical knowledge. So, yeah, but anyway, that's not what I wanted to say, because that has not a direct link to the eclipse, even though some of the legislation and the legal fights might be about the past South Node and Libra. What has happened during the COVID? How was it resolved? What was true? What was not true? What was lie? What was deception? And if something is deemed to have been deception, it needs to have consequences. Even if the how should I say, the element, the party member who was wrong, let's say, is the World Health Organization, not a person, but a big organization. Even they have to make amends. Even they have to, uphold the law. If they made a mistake, they have to, one way or another, put it right. But more importantly, so Venus and Black Moon Lilith, both of them oppose Saturn. Saturn at this moment is at 0 degrees 52 minutes of Pisces. So Saturn represents the reality check. Saturn represents exactly in the Pisces that which cannot be bypassed by optimism, by idealism, by spirituality. It represents the hard facts. And Black Moon Lilith and Venus opposing them, one way or another, we are being aware of these very, very hard facts. We have to make choices and decisions not based on ideal or principle, but on something solid and concrete, a necessity. So basically, Venus in the sign of Virgo, it has to advantages and be practical. Another very important aspect, and this is a really positive one, is Saturn holds a trine with, where is he? Mars, yes, in the sign of Scorpio. Mars, of course, is the co-ruler of Scorpio, so it is very powerful. It is able to bring out its very, very strongest qualities, especially the nighttime qualities in the sign of Scorpio. Now, if Mars not so long ago was in Libra, very uncomfortable, because in Libra, it had to necessarily take into consideration the situation of another, for example, in a partnership, or if it's not a partnership, the collective situation, or whatever is available, you know. In the sign of Scorpio, however, it is singular. It has a goal, it has a desire, it is going for it through any means necessary. So that is an energy of great empowerment. And trining this Saturn stability ultimately, well, it means that we have something to work with, something solid, something practical, something that truly gets us to where we need to be. We may not like it, it may not be our preference, but as long as it works, as long as it's solid, as long as it empowers us, we are gonna take it and work with it. So this aspect is really, really good because it gives us a certain kind of power, option, choice. We have something solid and concrete to work with. Now, another energy that I would like to mention here is that Jupiter, 13 degrees in the sign of Taurus retrograde, is opposing Ceres in the sign of Scorpio. So again, Ceres in Scorpio, toxicity, the ethical background of, for example, food, but all the toxins in it, what is natural, what is not natural, what is grown through substances very quickly, and what is truly organic, biological. But this also represents medicine, pharmaceutical companies. It represents even healing, because Scorpio is a sign which has many times to do with a certain way of healing. For example, healing through elimination, surgery, intervention, and of course, substances. This kind of medication, that kind of medication. Why not even holistic medication? Because plants do have substances in it, and those are in a way poison if we use it excessively. So there is going to be debate about that. There is going to be discussion about that. What is lawful, what is ethical, what is okay, and what is not. So there is going to be quite a lot of stir out there in the world. Now, of course, individually speaking, where does this 21 degrees of Libra fall in your chart? If it falls in, for example, 5th house or 7th house or even 11th house, there can be, you know, a big change. There can be a big change in relationship. For example, a divorce, or even if it's not a divorce, the relationship being reborn. The way the relationship used to play out terminates, is eclipsed by something. You know, Uranus, an unusual circumstance. Maybe, for example, a partner has to work abroad. How does this change the relationship? What happens after? Or something is being discovered. The partner all of a sudden has a different kind of sexual preference, or these are just silly examples, but something happens that brings an unexpected change. So this will change the dynamic of relationships. But regardless of which house it falls into, well, you know, Libra is still ruled by Venus. Venus at this time is in the sign of Virgo. So we need whatever decision or change this conjures up, that change imperatively needs to serve our highest good in a practical way as well. For example, a relationship, if it's platonic, chances are it will terminate because Venus in Virgo needs real love, real relationship, real connection. That which is just an alliance, that which is just a closer friendship, let's say, well, Venus will not support that. Also taken into consideration that we're after a very intense Venus retrograde, when Venus retrograded fully in the sign of Leo. So the truth within our hearts and the desire within our hearts are very crystal clear. Crystal clear in the sense what we need, crystal clear in the sense what we can no longer tolerate. So Venus is charged with that wisdom, with that energy, with everything she learned in her retrograde in Leo. So whatever changes are coming in our lives due to this eclipse, it needs to serve us practically. It needs to be a true value and a true change for the better for us individually, especially, and also Virgo routines. We need to embrace, feel, and use those values on an everyday practical basis. So this is not just the big things, but this is all the small things that we need. All the small things that bring us stability, Venus and Virgo, happiness, and a healthy sense of pride that we are okay with who we are and how our life is. So I do believe that this energy can change certain partnerships that, as I said, are just platonic, just a friendship, just a sheer alliance into single and proud in that sense. But at the same time, it can also change single and proud into I need love and connection in my life everyday basis. So single and proud can go to a relationship. So this is quite transformative of this area of our lives, collectively speaking, but also individually speaking, regardless of where specifically this Libra falls in your chart. And also something that is very certain, it will change our contractual behavior collectively. As in, we will behave differently and take different values into consideration when agreeing, when signing contracts, when entering any kind of partnership. And that which is unilateral, for example, a utility company, it's unilateral. You don't really get to have any terms and conditions. They just give you the form and you have to sign either agree or disagree, and that's your only choice. Now that can also be challenged by this energy. So anyway, it is going to be a fated moment. We must not forget that at any eclipse, the veil between the worlds is especially thin, and that is when the divine is as closest as it can to us. And it reacts to our desires, our wishes, our feelings, not all that much the present, because usually eclipses don't favor any magical working or manifestation because it's blocked. This is where you can no longer input your commands because the control panel is blocked. It works upon what you input into the universe, into the ether until that moment. So this can represent for a lot of people a moment of divine justice, whatever that justice or whatever that equilibrium means for them personally. So thank you so very much for listening. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. I really hope that this was helpful. Thank you for all the love, all the beautiful comments, all the likes and shares. If you'd like to support me and my channel, you can donate in the PayPal link in the description below. With this being said, I wish everyone a blessed eclipse, and until next time, bye for now.